I'm going to review the Panzer IV Ausf.J. Initial early production. This is a Cyber Hobby white box. Real quickly, I'm going to have to get into some sort of kit lineage to explain where this thing comes from. So this is from 2009. This is kit number 6549. And so the Panzer IV series has been very, well, there's a ton of them. So you had those super kits from 05, but where these kits primarily come from is an 07 kit, the F2G, which was 6360. Then from that you go to the G, which was 6363, same year. Then you go to the standard H kit in 09, which was 6300. Yes. So that's the main sort of changes. And then in 09 you had the J mid. These are all Dragon. And that one is 6556. That one and this one came out at the exact same time. So this was a Cyber Hobby Limited. That one was the standard Dragon one. All of the parts of 6556 are in this box. So this could be considered a review for that as well. What they did with this thing though is this is like the initial version of a J, which, to understand the J, it was the last version of the Panzer IV. It was simplified, sort of retrograded backwards, making it worse, I guess, by removing the electrical traverse for the turret and some of the vision ports on the turret as well. And then they put 3 instead of 4 return rollers. So you see here you got 4, and there should only, normally a J would have 3, right? And then this has a standard Panzer IV exhaust, like the H did, but the J's had these duals in the back, like the Vomag Jag Panzer IVs. So this is, all the parts are in there for the late exhaust. There's nothing you can do about getting rid of return rollers. So this is just the very initial J, and then very shortly after they removed the return roller and exhaust. So, but all the parts are in there for the exhaust in this, and they're essentially, near as makes no difference, the same kit. Also worth noting is that J's wouldn't have Zimmerit, so this is fine. And, you know, I don't even know how many of these were actually built with 4 return rollers, but. So, marking options. There's a couple. They all have basically the same camo scheme, tritonal, late war, so you have more sandy of a Dunkelgelb. And some may say a more reddish Rotbraun. I tend to lean towards the darker ones, but evidence suggests that the late war tanks normally had this sort of very rusty color. Okay, so it looks like you've got plastic Schürzen for the turret, and then there's, you know, a slide molded hull tub, which we expect. There's a lot going on in here. If I were in a shop looking at this, things that would stand out, I would look for metal Schürzen, which I see. You can model this open. Not a lot of PE from the look of it. These little grills here in the turret to protect, I think, is what those are for. Those are weird. And then the same bits that's on all of the standard Panzer IVs. Injection molded with clasps, 40 centimeter magic tracks, so late Panzer IVs would have 40s, not 38s. 38s are reasonably thinner. Looking at the instructions on the sprue map, you get a lot of blue. And that's to be expected with anything that's been a tooling that's been sort of going this long. So, lots of sprues from lots of variants. I'm sure there's H, you know, Panzer IV H sprues in here, and all kinds of other stuff that we probably just don't need. But, you know, there's not like any sprues that are completely blue with like one piece, but a lot that's just, in general, not used. So, as we've come to expect from all things Panzer IV, Well, we've got a little bit of PE in this version of the idler, which is different than I'm used to, at least. And the two-piece sprocket. Actually, you've got the option of either idler, so that's cool. These were very standard on the later stuff, like H's. Return rollers, bump stops. You're doing the rear plate already. Now there's options between the initial and the early, because this is a 2-in-1. I'm not sure how different those two things are. Hull tub. There's a little mounting bit on the back. And the bogey's going on already. So here's the exhaust. Now this is the Panzer IV style exhaust / initial early for the J. Most pictures, if not all, that you'll see of J's usually have the twin flame suppressing exhausts. There's the idler adjusters, which this is only one piece, and the super kits, this I think is 4 or 5. And I don't mind it being simplified, they still look good. So, some spare tracks going on already, yep. Some real tiny tie downs as well, which are optional between PE and plastic. You need to drill some holes out here for that. And we're already putting fenders down and our multi-part MG. This isn't too bad. Sometimes these mud flap bits can be a bit annoying as well. Okay. With side skirt. Interesting. So, you need to drill holes for where the mountings for those will go. And again, there's a difference in the rear for the initial versus the early. On the initial, it looks like you're putting 3 tracks in the rear. Here's some differences in the engine deck hatches. Different ways of wrapping the tow cable, that's fun. And then here you're getting the whole upper hull panels together, 2 side panels, the upper bit, intakes. Again, there's some things to cut off here. This may be because that upper hull is either for the later J's or an H. So tools going on to fenders, you get the top view. This actually tends to get a little bit confusing for me with any of the 4s that I've done. It's not too bad, but it gets a little bit, I don't know, cluttered. There's the other side, so the other fender. Different convoy lights. More of these tools all getting jammed down on there. Spare wheel holder. Ooh, some nice PE for the jack block. Some teeny little bits for the rear fenders. Now the cupolas going together and the gun assembly. There's options for the gun sleeve as well. Ooh, and I always like when they do this. A ton of options for different muzzle brakes. You get this a lot with the anything with a Pak 40, like Martyr 2s. We'll have tons of those. It's fun. And then so here's the gun going into the mantlet and the breech assembly. So turret, not a lot to deal with because it has all the ports are eliminated on the J's. Some ventilator choices and your stowage bin. But here we're going upper and lower with the gun. Small amount of interior detail. And then so the initial versus the early has no ports on the hatches and the doors. but the early, so, okay, see, the initial does have them still, and then the early, they've already been deleted. And there's where those PE grills go, and they cover essentially the gap between the Scherzen and the stowage bin. This can be a bit of a pain as well, ever dealing with this stuff. Okay. So, this looks, oh yeah, without side skirt here, with side skirt here. So here you're putting on the long brackets, the ever famous CAing plastic parts to nickel side armor, the stuff of nightmares. Looks amazing when it's on, but people tend not to like it because there's no marking points sometimes on these. Final assembly tracks. They actually do list the tracks as the last thing. That's very cool. They're learning. And then the marking option stuff. Totenkopf, unidentified unit, and Das Reich. All tritonal, all remarkably similar looking. So, the Dragon card is what I like to see. So we've got 40 centimeter Panzer IV tracks here, shirts in here, tolerable style PE. Like when I look at a PE sheet like this, I see what the things are, and I'm like, yeah, I can deal with that. The ones with all the clamps can be a little overwhelming for me, at least. Just the single tow cable, you know, a few turret numbers and Balkenkreuz, the 2 sleeve options for the gun, and that's it. So it's a lot of good stuff, but not so much. Hull tub. Crazy clean and crisp. It's exactly why I buy essentially only Dragon stuff. It's just so, they nail this kind of stuff. It just looks very real, crisp, not toy-like in any way. It's exactly what you want to see. There's the gas tanks. Those holes there. So, just awesome looking. And it does have the armor molded on, so you don't have to glue that on. The turret top, again, very crisp, like those lines right there. Ooh. Just looks fantastic. Also in that bag was this piece protected, which is the rear of the turret Schützen. There. Very thin. Like razor edge style thin. It's as close to scale thickness as you're going to get for armor like this. So this had broken off of one of the sprues. It's where they mold it like on the end of one, and then it inevitably always snaps off. The win here is that, although it actually kind of looks like it was clipped off, at least it broke off here and not here. Detail-wise, everything on here looks really good, so there are some older moldings of this floating around in kits. There's like one with interior detail molded onto the top of this and one that isn't, so. But that looks good. And here's where it would have been molded too. Right there, and it broke off. Go figure. This I like to see, where they have a support molded onto the spare. Ooh, I just bent that. Whoops. having this in here to hold that shape, that's very good. Hopefully I didn't just ruin that piece, since they went to so much trouble to protect it and then I just bump it. Yeah, life sucks. Let's see here. Barrel cleaning rods, the ball mount for the MG, this thing on the mantlet, actually these two pieces of the mantlet period, hatches with tolerable molded on detail, a rear plate I'm not sure if we're using. This is labeled as a Panzer IV sprue, so there could be a lot of this that we don't use. There's the turret hatches with the ports still in them, in the side plates, without the vision ports I'm used to seeing. I build more early Panzer IVs. So you've got tools with decent looking clamps where they do have them, and it looks like the antenna. This thing is all primarily shorts in here. The different types for the two front pieces, and then just all the brackets. All in plastic, all basically to scale. Maybe a little bit thick, I'm not sure. Looks like two options for the cupola hatch. This one has these things molded on there. Cupola without the visors in, so the visors will be separate, which are right here, so you can normally pick open or closed. There's closed, there's open. I like to make a few of them open and a few of them closed because it looks cool. All the different muzzle brakes, which, as far as spares go, it's one of my favorite things to see, because I feel like I could do a lot with that, and it's probably not as true as I like to think it is. Plastic brackets for Shorten. This little bugger broke a little bit, but I'm assuming that's what these are. This does look like a nightmare. And the plastic option for this, which is normally in PE. There's the bottom of the turret, which doesn't have the notches, which I prefer, and with the teeth. I always dig that. Another mantlet. This looks like gun breech. More hatches. We've seen those before already, so we'll be using one or the other. There's the slide molded gun, which I am totally good with. That's all I ask for, as long as it's not two halves. There is the other parts of the stowage bin. What I was talking about with this. I've had ones where you had to glue these supports inside of there. Some more muzzle brake. This looks to be, this must be an H sprue. Let me check. Just generic Panzer IV. This is the generator for the electric turret traverse, so this will not be used. And then that looks like a huge firewall? Yeah. But everything on here looks very good, but I'm sure they use this sprue for a ton of these later Panzer IV variants. Front of the mantlet there as well. Oh, and this, we'd already seen a version of this that was slide molded, so here's a two-piece one, the front of the mantlet. And then here, stuff like the front deck and the rear plate. This is listed as a Brumbear sprue. Got idler adjusters, 3 different variants of them. Man, I love Dragon. I know that's annoying, but it's also amazing at the same time. And then the extensions for the hull front. Not a lot on here. Not sure why you needed this version, or this sprue, but You could upgrade some Tamiya stuff with those. A lot of guys won't show these, but I always do. Here's our Bag O Panzer IV suspension. I won't spend all day on it, but I like to check the fidelity of the moldings as they are used constantly, and the more they are used, the more flashy they get. So I just like to have a look at it and make sure that it looks tolerable. Sprocket looks good. Wheel caps still look clean. Bump stops still look clean. This looks very, very good. Yeah. The rollers, everything doesn't have any flash on it, so that's all I can ask for. The standard wheels and idlers. And I'm bumping the table. Yeah, the wheels look really good. Bump stops look good. Bogey parts don't show any kind of age. Yep, still looks good. So here we have, again, just labeled as Panzer IV. We've got H style, actually a lot of Panzer IVs. Anything after the E would have these, I think. So like the F and G, I believe, had these. Another ball mount for the front. Some vision ports we won't be using because these were deleted on the J. Slightly bent antenna. Not too bad. Not bad enough to not use, because antennas get bent. So it's realism. Smoke launchers. That's cool. I love these things. I love having extra ones of them, especially for Tamiya Tiger tank purposes. Strategic Tiger tank purposes. And then convoy light, standard stuff. I'm sure that the things that we would need to use off of this will be things like antennas or hatches or something minuscule that you wouldn't think about. The turret Schürzen armor. Including that ring that goes up in the top. And then it looks like that's all that's on there. Yep. This stuff can be a pain to mount correctly. So you gotta be careful when you're doing that. The hull, upper hull deck. Detail looks good. Nothing to complain about there. It's got a nice firm support here for the glacis as well. Very cool. So here is the engine deck stuff, another rear plate. I'm sure a lot of this guy gets used. Again, generic Panzer IV labeled. Mud flaps for the rear. Part of the intakes. Fire extinguisher, the H style exhaust. These guys, this guy, and this guy. I'm sure this sprue has been used many, many times as well, but everything on it looks very good. Now here's one that's actually labeled J. So let's see what's in particular here. You've got turret hatches without pistol ports or view ports, which was specific to the J. You've got these hatches again for the third time. I'm assuming these are the ones we would use since on the J sprue. The molded together 3 tracks. There's a rear plate. I know there's options for that as well. And so nothing screams to my mind like that's clearly the J apart from these hatches. Alright, so fenders all alone on a sprue. The anti-slip looks very fine and very good. It is on both sides. There's a lot of underside detail on these fenders. There is your standard issue 7-part MG sprue. Looks as good as it ever does. Now here we have, labeled as an H sprue, mud flaps, parts for the engine deck hatches, some real tiny stuff. All these are mounts, little hooks that go on Panzer IVs. Not a lot on that sprue. So that is the Panzer IV.J initial from Cyber Hobby. My advice on this guy is do not overpay for it because it's a white box, because the only difference is between this and that. The mid-J from Dragon, 6556, is the exhaust, and this one has one more return roller. Apart from that, they are like identical. And either one will be suitable for a super late war Panzer IV. They're fantastic. They will build up without any need for aftermarket stuff. Thanks, guys.